But when Prince Siddhartha Gautama was 7 years old, the woman who took care of him from his birth, his aunt, his stepmother, Gautama, told the young prince this story. And she said to him, 7 years ago, your father, King Suddhodana, and your mother, Queen Maya, became aware that they were going to have a baby. They were happy, and a celebration was started. It was a celebration that went on for several months, and people carried lanterns and candles and did whatever they do in those days to have a celebration, but it went a long time. Sometime after all that started, the queen had a dream. And in that dream, she was approached by a pure white elephant. And the story says, with 6 tusks. And the elephant had a lotus in one of its tusks. And he walked up to her in her sleep, and he placed the lotus inside Queen Maya. And then he walked in himself. He followed her right in the dream. When the queen awoke, she felt the peace that she never felt before. A peace that was unbelievable. It was in every part of her body. She was just so relaxed and so at peace. She was transformed. She was another person. She knew that something special was going to happen, and she told the king. And the king called for all his magicians and priests and sunums and holy people, and he said, I want you to tell me what this story's about. This is kind of weird about the elephant and the flower and going into the queen. And they said to him, that means that you're going to have a son. And not just a son, but a very powerful, world-known son. And the king said, well, tell me more. He said, well, your son is going to grow up to be a very famous and powerful king, or a holy person. And kings don't like to hear that at all. They want their offspring to be very powerful, to be kings, to take over other countries, make the kingdom bigger, get more money, all the things that kings think about. So he said, what do I got to do to make this happen? I don't want a monk running around the palace telling me what to do. So they said, well, treat him like a prince. Treat him like a king. Treat him well. Educate him well. Give him everything that a king or prince could possibly have, but don't let him see suffering. Keep him away from sickness, old age, and death. But above all, don't let him hang around with any priest. The Buddha came to the world through a woman, accompanied by 4 deities, 4 gods, to protect this Buddha to be and his mother. The impact on the queen was to make her intrinsically pure and perfect, the embodiment of the 5 precepts. At the birth of this miraculous baby, the gods appeared, and they addressed Queen Maya. And they said, Maha Maya, rejoice, O great queen. The son of great power is born to you today. And the baby came forth from the side of the queen. And suddenly the heavens opened up, and lights flashed, and showers of hot and cold nectar, hot and cold tea that we're going to use today to bathe the baby Buddha, came down from heaven to bathe the baby Buddha and his mother. And immediately the baby was able to stand. And he took 12 steps to the north. He surveyed the 4 quarters of the world, and he announced, I am the highest in the world. I am the greatest in the world. I am the foremost in the world. This is my last birth. Now there will be no more rebirths for me. And once more the lights went off like nuclear explosions all over the cosmos. But he was the savior of the world. He was everything everybody was waiting for. So now, back to my original story. Back to Pajapati's account of the birth. And she said, as the queen was going to her family's home, as was the custom, she stopped in the Lumbini garden. It was filled with birds and flowers, and as she was walking towards a rose tree in full bloom, she reached up and grabbed the tree, and when she did, the baby was born. The baby came from her side, still holding on to the branch. Fortunately, she had lots of attendants, and they wrapped the baby in silk clothing and took the baby and his mother back to the castle. Because the prophecies of the king devoted a great deal of effort to keeping the prince in the house, away from looking for those 4 signs of suffering, the king made his staff promise and make sure that the prince was schooled in all the arts, martial arts, history, mathematics, archery, anything a prince should be skilled in, he was trained. And they said, don't let him even look over the wall. But after a while, you can only lock a person up so long. And the prince started to wonder what was going on outside the castle. And finally he said to his chauffeur, in those days they called him his charioteer, can you get me out over the wall? So one night out they went. And what he found was upsetting. He saw suffering. He saw sickness, old age, and death. And he saw suffering. And he was upset. It's really important to know that the King Sem, the man that we call Buddha, was upset. He was sick to his stomach over what he saw. Are we like that today? Are we upset? Is anybody here really upset over seeing sickness, old age, and death? Or do we outsource it these days? Do we let somebody else take care of it, sort of as the king wanted done? One of his trips outside the castle, the Buddha-to-be saw a monk, probably wearing very little, but those bright yellow saffron-colored clothes that some monks wear. And the Buddha could realize the peace that was coming from that monk, from that holy person. And that affected the Buddha too. He couldn't get it out of his mind why that man could be so peaceful while the rest of us are experiencing so much suffering. Time passed in the royal courts, and soon the Buddha was married. Yodasara and the king and the prince had a baby, Rahula. It was a magic time, it was a happy time. The Buddha and his wife loved it in the castle. They were treated well, they loved their child. But about the time the Buddha got to be about 29 years old, he couldn't stand it anymore. He knew that he had to leave the castle. He had to leave his wife that he loved dearly. He had to leave his child that he loved so dearly. And the story tells us that one night, in the middle of the night, he went in and he kissed his wife goodbye and hugged his child, and off he went. He went out to find the suffering in the world. There have been many Buddhas, hundreds of thousands of Buddhas, and there'll be many more. And the first 2 stories are just metaphors. They're stories to make us think. Stories to make us think. Think about life. Think about babies. Think about families. Think about all the aspects of life that were in those stories that I told today. Buddha doesn't become a Buddha by himself. It takes a mother, in his case 2 mothers. It takes fathers. It takes a lot of people. So the birth of the Buddha didn't just happen a long time ago. It's happening now. It's happening here. And you know, they rewrite the Buddha story all the time. The Chinese have the Monkey King. Wonderful Buddha story. Harry Potter is the Buddha baby story. It's just written in contemporary talk. But it's the Buddha. It's Jisoo Buddha going through the world. So there are lots of Buddha stories. You're all Buddhas. I congratulate you all. You're all mothers, even the males in the room, even the babies and the young people in the room. We're all mothers. We all have the responsibility to birth the baby Buddha every minute of every day. And in doing that, we're increasing the wisdom and enlightenment in the world. And thank you.